Transportation is one of the most targeted industries by hackers. According to cybersecurity provider Mimecast, transportation was one of the three most targeted sectors throughout the first 100 days of the pandemic, and it was the only industry that was attacked with increased frequency nearly every week. Just because it seems we're on the back end of the COVID crisis, that doesn't mean this is about to slow down. According to Mimecast, there's almost a 95% chance that cyber attacks are going to increase after a disruptive, fear-induced event such as the pandemic. Joining us today to discuss cybersecurity strategies are John Wilson of B&H Transfer, Bob Veray of Dupre Logistics, and Matt Kikase, Senior Vice President of Business Systems for Dasky. Well, John, jumping into you guys' story, you have a unique, I guess you're positioned uniquely on this panel that talks about cybersecurity and that you guys have actually been victimized. So can you, if you don't mind, let's circle back into about 2018 and tell us what happened to you.
Well, we've had a little experience, unfortunately. I think it probably was a Monday or Tuesday morning, come in and something's wrong with the Loadmaster server. Nobody can get on Loadmaster. And so we started digging in and get on the server and realize that all of the files are encrypted, and there's this message left behind. You've sent, I don't remember the exact figure, but it was several $1,000s at the time in Bitcoin to such and such, and that was our first experience. And as we got to digging into it, we discovered that yours truly had made a kind of a rookie mistake and left a password and an account that I had basically abandoned, but had left it active, just not doing really good IT work. And that one was compromised, and it did have access to a lot of the systems, and basically anything that account had access to, they were able to encrypt those files. So they actually got in through probably an open RDP or a remote desktop port, and left us kind of high and dry. Fortunately, we had very good backups, current backups on everything at the time. They had not gotten sophisticated enough with the ransomware type attacks that they were able to encrypt your SQL databases, particularly if they were attached and running. So the database itself was fine. It was just all the supporting files and everything else on that server had been encrypted. Again, we had good backups. My third-party guys were quickly on the case with us. We were able to basically just rebuild that server in the matter of I'd say half a day or so. All in all, we were extremely lucky on that one. Soon after that, I would say within 6 months or so, had a user open an email that didn't look suspicious. However, it launched a ransomware type attack that encrypted her entire laptop. That was a little tougher to recover for that user. We didn't have a lot of backups on the individual users at that point, and so we pretty much lost that laptop. It was an older system, it was due replacement, so it just made more sense to completely replace that system. And would love to say that was the end of the story for us, that we learned some lessons, and we did. We'd made a lot of improvements, and we were still working on a lot of things, but there was one piece that I knew that we were lacking in. My third-party guys we were all working towards getting that one piece closed up, and there was one server still hanging out there with some open access on RDP. Sure enough, started getting some calls that there seemed to be some problems back at the office, get down here and get to digging and look at that one server, which had supplied some remote desktop type services. Well, sure enough, it had been hit, and it was something I'd never even thought about. Never even thought about this being sort of weaponized. But the system that my third party had put on all of our computers, it's one of these newer generations that has some artificial intelligence, sort of learns your system and learns what's normal. They actually got into the system, tried to launch a malware attack. The software shut it down. So they decided to wreak a little more havoc the only way they could. Somehow they got into our backup on that one, deleted it, and then on the way out turned on Microsoft's BitLocker encryption. And so that effectively wiped the entire server out, because we couldn't get on it, of course. We didn't have that, I think, 42-bit key that was generated on the way out. I have not seen where that has been done a lot, but apparently that must be sort of the last ditch if the other doesn't work. Because there was no way for them to leave us a ransomware note or file or what have you, because they locked us out of the system, and they probably threw away the key when they did that. As I mentioned, they got into our backups, and that became a frustrating process with our cloud backup provider. Took them over 2 weeks to recover those deleted files from their systems. We weren't real happy with them that they were willing to just delete a backup without any kind of second authorization or anything. Needless to say, we're not relying on that company anymore, and I won't talk about who that was. But anyway, it took us a couple of weeks. Again, we were able to spin up some virtual machines and keep people moving. And Monday morning, maybe a 20 or 30 minute delay getting a few people changed over on some addresses and that kind of thing, and we were able to keep trucking. That didn't come out right, but that's what we do.
I've seen some data that suggests that the trucking industry is one of the top 5 most targeted segments by hackers, by cyber threats. So can you walk us through a little bit of Daskey's cybersecurity strategy, and how do you kind of protect yourself from outside threat?
There are several things. I think as a starting point, it's a pretty generally accepted concept that your greatest threats are from within your own people. So as you probably are aware, you and I and others get several emails per day or per week that entice you to click on links to take you to websites where we'll just say bad things can happen. Those are referred to as phishing emails. And if you click a link, you potentially can download malware, which can adversely affect your system. So internally, you certainly want to address people, which I will in a moment. Externally, anyone with a network has a firewall that's probably attacked several times an hour with various bad actors trying to get into your system.
What would you say is maybe a step one? What is the most fundamentally basic but important step you could take to enhance your cybersecurity program?
Well, I think 2, enhanced firewall protection. So you want all the appropriate software and protection to block all unused or unnecessary ports that allow access into your system, and protect yourself on any external access that is authorized through encrypted services such as VPN connections that encapsulate you in your own network. The other is training your people. That's going to be the big key, is keeping your own internal people well educated and an awareness that these things are out there and these things can happen, and it's only a point and click away. We use a company called Threat Advice, and Threat Advice delivers video training. So we require all our non-driver staff to, on a quarterly basis, take 8 or 10 video training sessions that include a 3 or 4 minute video and a 5-question quiz to review the content of that video. So we are on a quarterly basis continually delivering content as a reminder and awareness.
In any security world, you want to take a layered approach, and in the layered approach, you want a physical security. That's your doors, your the basic keeping people out of the buildings where you need to keep them out of, and then you want to have access or authentication capabilities, and your passwords really should be set up in a way that you can have a complicated or strong password using both numbers, capital letters, special characters, so that password's not easy to breach. We also choose to use multi-factor authentication, and that is a means by which you have to somehow go back. We normally use a cell phone to do it, but there's fobs and other ways to do it, where we send a security number back to the individual. They have to reply back with that security number in order to get onto the system. Then the next part of this that we do is intrusion detection and prevention. From there, we'll screen different known malicious sites that have a signature. In addition to that, we have security that looks at abnormal behaviors of an end user. If somebody all of a sudden starts downloading half of their files from the computer onto a flash drive, we'll know that that's an abnormal behavior, and it'll set off alarms for detection in our help desk, service desk area. We also like to have what's known as security certificates and encryption in any data that's coming or leaving the building. In addition to that, we have complete backup and recovery plans that have business continuity incorporated into them. It's important to have that, as many of the attacks will attempt to lock up your data, and once your data gets locked up, you've got to be able to recover it quickly and easily. So you should have a response plan and a recovery plan that allows you to do that. And then last but not least, we monitor and measure all of these topics, and we're always trying to improve as things change very rapidly in the environment. So let's talk a little bit about phishing. So phishing has become pretty advanced. There's a lot of folks out there that their idea is to spoof an executive. They'll take my name, for example, and they'll send an email to one of my associates or one of my workers, and saying that I need something, and they do that to make the email have clarity of coming from an important actor. The other part that happens is many times they will make it sound very urgent, and they're asking for stuff. What they're trying to get you to do is to buy into that emotional response. And once you do, if you click on a link or you open up an executable, you've now opened yourself up to their attack. What we do here at Dupre is we use social engineering, and we'll send out fake phishing messages for our employees to pick up and work with. The purpose of this is to try and get them familiar with what the approaches are that are taken in order for the malicious characters to get them to give access. Almost every phishing attack will come with some kind of sense of urgency. What the character's trying to get you to do is feel like you need to react quickly to that message. The other thing to look for is if somebody's asking for account information, whether it be personal or work, it's very, very rare. In fact, I would say don't ever respond to that. Whatever your plan is as an organization, whether that's calling the service desk or whatever, if you get a message like that, don't respond directly to it. Reach out and ask somebody, even if it's calling the individual who sent the message. If you're being spoofed and you call, if I was the one that was a spoofed party, you called me and I'd say, no, I didn't send you that message, then you know not to click on it. People will actually play on and tell you that you've been hacked. And so be aware of that, because sometimes that'll freak people out. You've been hacked, so click here to clean your machine. You may have even seen some of these on your personal machines, but that's another typical ploy that's used. Anytime somebody says, "I have money for you," "I want money," those are also red flags that you should look out for. You've won a prize. Oh, click here and you get your $1,000 Walmart card. Those are all tricks that are used to try and get you to click on that link. And once you click on that link, that character, the bad character, has access to your information. And then the other thing that happens a lot, and don't be fooled by this, you'll see some of these other things in there, and the bottom will look like a perfect logo of a very reputable firm. And so, again, that's part of the message, trying to make it look real. So the idea there is just be on the lookout for that.
Looking at kind of the environment that we're in right now, a lot of employees are remote. I've seen some data that suggests that phishing attacks are on the rise because everybody's employees are kind of shotgunned all over the country right now. They're not necessarily in office. Have you upped any of your social engineering experimentation, trying to catch people that are now working remotely that formerly might have been in office?
It's a funny story. We did, and we actually had a social engineering go out basically the day after we pretty much instituted our work from home policy. One of my executives wasn't very happy with me for that, and then I had another one that came back the next day and was congratulating me on what a great sight of forethought that was. But all that being said, yes, we have. We've increased the number of times we've done the social engineering. We're trying to make sure that the people understand, because you're working in a different environment, your emotions are different than if you're at work. That's exactly what these guys prey on. They want to catch you in a weak moment. They want to catch you when you're willing to click on something. One of the attacks that we saw come through actually told people that an office had been closed down because an employee had been tested positive for COVID-19, and that they wanted them to click on this link to find out where the closest testing center is for them to go. You know, if you think about that, and if you happen to be in the office before with that same individual, that's a pretty effective attack. And you know, you just got to really be on the defensive for it. The first phishing test didn't come back as stellar in the results as we would have liked. So we've instituted more frequent training cycles along with the actual phishing or social engineering experiments.
You covered this a little bit, but maybe just to get a little bit of clarity and to consolidate it for my benefit, I get an email that looks suspicious. What's step 1, step 2, step 3?
First step is don't click on anything. If you have a service desk, or there should be a remediation plan in place that your IT department tells you follow this. In our case, we have them call directly to our service desk, and the service desk will be able to get into their screen and actually see, okay, is this something that's legitimate or not? Don't reply to it. Go out and actually, if there's a website or something like that, you might want to look at that website, go see if you can see that website as a normal URL. Sometimes you can just hover over that link and it'll give you information. If that information does not look completely familiar to you, do not click on that link. So those are a couple of ideas that can help you prevent from making a bad mistake.
For the people out there who may not have a formal training plan for cybersecurity, I think a lot of us take for granted that everybody understands if you get an email from somebody you don't know, don't click a link. But if you don't have a formal cybersecurity plan, what are a couple quick and effective things that could be implemented maybe in a matter of a week?
I think my advice would be, if you don't have a cybersecurity plan, you should probably develop one pretty quickly. I think the first and foremost, if your employees are the most susceptible to an agent for an attack, you want to protect email. We use Microsoft Office 365, which is in the cloud, so we don't host any email servers ourselves. So what you've done is you've distributed your email across several cloud servers, which have high level of security around them. As opposed to having a server sitting in your own server room that potentially is accessible through a breach of your network.
Is there any part of cybersecurity, or even specifically as part of Daskey's overarching cyber philosophies, that you'd like to talk about that maybe we haven't gotten into yet?
We didn't touch on a separate matter. We concentrated on our internal employees as certainly a training spot, but there are also several firms that offer cybersecurity protection and monitoring. It's referred to as managed detection and response. We have an outside firm, and essentially they monitor all of our endpoints, an endpoint being a PC, a server, sometimes phones. So there is software loaded on the device, not necessarily a traditional antivirus software, but software that monitors the memory activity in a computer. So traditional antivirus software will monitor for certain files or malware that might be loaded in your system. Memory monitoring actually is monitoring for adverse happenings within your computer. An example would be, at any given time, a user would open a Word document. There shouldn't be any activity around that Word document making a call out to the internet. And that's a key way that the phishing campaigns can break in your system, is they'll embed that in a Word document, and when you open that Word document, it fires off that process that essentially goes from your network out to a site and begins the process of downloading malware or some obscure thing. So the managed detection services monitor that, and they run 24-hour operating centers that will get alerts from that. And there are several things that happen on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis that they catch, they stop, and can prevent bad events from occurring.
Is there any part about cybersecurity or really a cyber threat that we haven't discussed yet that you feel like we should get into right now?
We've got to understand that security has, and I've purposely not gone into great deals of technology and kept this high level today, because this is really a corporate issue. It's not an IT issue anymore. This is something that the operations folks, the executive management, all of the service folks that help supply your business all have to be kind of in lockstep to make this work properly. And to me, there's a few steps that, if you can do that, help you to design what I would call your security roadmap. So first thing to do is understand where your vulnerabilities are. And the second thing to do is to prioritize which ones of those are your weakest points, or the weakest places where you could be impacted by somebody who's trying to break your security. Then that's where you develop the roadmap, and you take the priorities of your highest risks and you put those at the top of your roadmap and execute against those first. Always monitor and measure your improvements, so you know that your time is being spent where you want it to be and it's having the impact that you want it to have. And last but not least, it's really critical that you review and adjust, because this landscape changes, and it changes on a very, very, very frequent basis. So I think you need to really be on guard for things to change and being able to react when those changes happen. It's awesome if you can get ahead of those changes and be proactive to them, but as fast as this change, sometimes reaction is the best you can do.
Well, you had mentioned, lessons learned, and you've kind of had 3 go-rounds with this. So looking back on all of it, what are some of the takeaways that, some of your lessons that, looking for the 4th and the 5th time, that you hope to apply to kind of mitigate them to an even greater extent?
We've learned that you really need to rely on people that are specialized, are in it daily. Spend the money. It's going to cost you. Unfortunately, that's the world we're in. Heed the advice on password management. Make them long and strong. Backups, again, I can't stress the need for good backups. Don't take the attitude or have the thought that early on, 10, 15 years ago, nobody was really interested in trucking. Now they're just, they're looking everywhere.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you sharing your experiences and some of your strategies and policies that you put in place to insulate your companies to the extent possible from a cyber attack. I think my big takeaway here is maybe something we all learned in scouting. Always be prepared.